Welcome, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Art of Justice, Protest Art and Black Lives Matter. On behalf of the Political Science and African American Studies programs, and also on behalf of the Sophia Libman Humanities Colloquium and the Black Student Union, all co-sponsors of this event, I bring you greetings from Hood College in Frederick, Maryland. I am Tamlin Tucker-Worgs, and I'm the chair of the Political Science Department here at Hood. I am so pleased to welcome you here. Tonight is a very special night. I'm pleased that we will have two featured artists, Mr. Jonah Elijah and Miss Yetunde Sapp, who will talk about their artwork, particularly how it explores Black culture, Black life, and the themes of Black resistance, Black humanity, and Black Lives Matter protests. This is the final event in a year-long series that has explored race, politics, and public policy, sponsored and led by many departments, including the Political Science Department, the Humanities Colloquium, and many more across campus. And the series was inspired by the murders of Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd, and others, and the uprisings and protests that occurred afterwards all around the world. It is my hope that we will all be elevated by what we hear tonight, and all be inspired to do our part to push the needle towards racial justice in whatever capacity available to us, and to move towards the valuing of Black lives and humanity in this country and in the world. Before we get to the good part, which is hearing from our speakers of the evening, I want you to indulge me for a few more minutes because I want to set the context and explain how this particular program came to be. 6 years ago, on April 12th, 2015, almost 6 years ago today, Freddie Gray, a young African-American man, was taken into custody by Baltimore City Police in the Baltimore neighborhood of Sandtown, Winchester, where Gray lived in the Gilmore housing complex. Police asserted that Gray first made eye contact and then ran from them. They chased and arrested him and put him in a police transport on the floor of the van, shackled by both hands and feet. When they arrived to the booking station with Gray, he was not responsive, and they refused to book him. He was then transported to the hospital, where he died 7 days later from a spinal injury, which was ruled as a homicide. All this happened in the context of heightened awareness of police brutality and the poor relationship in many cases between police and Black communities across the country. Freddie Gray's death in police custody incensed members of the Black community who had already been protesting over police brutality incidents in Baltimore and across the United States. Gray's murder led to unrest across much of West Baltimore. More than 500 people were arrested, 15 buildings and 144 cars were set on fire. The U.S. National Guard was called in to patrol the city of Baltimore, and there was a curfew for the week. 6 Baltimore officers were charged with Gray's death, but they were eventually all released and the charges dropped. But the death of Freddie Gray and the unrest that followed continued the national conversation on race and policing. Baltimore joined Ferguson, New York, Baton Rouge, and other localities. And unfortunately, we have even more to add to that list, which in recent years have all erupted in civil unrest over the killing of unarmed Black people by police officers. The uprisings in the country and recent ones have highlighted racial injustice, systemic racism, and really the ubiquity of racism, but also highlighted what one scholar calls spatial injustice, an examination of how inequality is distributed geographically. So that neighborhoods like Sandtown, Winchester are clearly under-resourced, under-invested, and that this is a result of systemic racism, not in public policy, not just happenstance. They don't just happen to be this way. In the immediate aftermath of the Freddie Gray uprisings, there were attempts by individuals and community organizations to transform these communities through what I'm calling justice landscaping. For example, local artists and activists painted several murals at key locations in the neighborhood, the exact place where Gray was arrested, across the street from the Gilmore homes, and in the larger West Baltimore area. This is an example of this, what I'm calling justice landscaping. These murals commemorate Gray's life and also commemorate and celebrate Black protests. They are clear examples of landscaping in that they alter the physical space. These artworks stand in contrast to the visibly decayed physical structures that surround them. Moreover, they stand as symbols commemorating Black resistance in spaces that are often defined by the oppressive forces of disinvestment, exploitation, economic marginalization, and racist policies. In 2018, two former Hood students, graduates, Hood alumni, Jayla Harris and Aaliyah Buford. They promised me they would try to get on. I haven't been able to look and see if they're here, but these were two students who, both Jayla, Aaliyah, and I set out to study this phenomenon of justice landscaping. We went to St. Louis, Missouri, and also we spent a week in our own Baltimore, Maryland. And the pictures that you saw at the beginning of the webinar, the slideshow, were most of those were taken as a part of our research. In the ensuing years, I continued to be a student of this phenomenon. And guess what? I found that two young people in my very own circle, so I call them two of my young people. I call them this because I know both of their families well, and their families are in full effect here tonight on the Zoom call. But these two artists are at the center of this phenomenon. They are part of this cohort of visionaries who do public art work and mural work and what I call justice landscaping. In addition to the landscaping, making the communities better, more aesthetically pleasing, more beautiful, this justice landscaping also helps us to mourn and to show reverence for the lives that were lost. They also help us to celebrate the struggle and move us towards justice and liberation. They show where we have been, putting our contemporary moment in political and historical context. And they also show us where we need to go. They explore visions for a just life and a just and life-affirming future. They push back against attempts at the dehumanization of Black people and affirm that Black life is indeed important and it indeed matters. So to properly introduce Jonah and Yetunde, I want to invite Ms. Armani Jackson, who is a member of the Black Student Union at Hood College. She's a member of the executive board, and she is a biology major and a junior here at Hood, and she is going to introduce Yetunde. Thank you, Armani.
Yetunde is a multimedia artist, muralist, and creative director native to Washington, D.C. Her identity as a Black woman comes as a constant source of inspiration in her work as both an artist and organizer, as she constantly navigates her identity in the context of predominantly rich and white spaces. Within the art world, there are not many seats that have been made for Black women, but rather than waiting for a seat at the table, Yetunde figured it was time to build a table of her own. In the wake of COVID-19, Yetunde embarked on her first entrepreneurial venture, Slack House, which stands for Support a Living Artist Collective House, a BIP OC artist residence and content house that serves as a space for artists of color to thrive, collaborate, and access necessary resources to succeed. A solution to problems she has been that has seen constantly showing up for her and her peers. I'll give it to you, Yetunde.
Thank you for that. Hi, I'm Yetunde. I'm going to present some work this evening. Thank you for that intro. My name is Yetunde Sapp, and as she stated, I'm an artist. Sorry. Okay. So yes. So I started doing art at a really young age, and one of my first sources of inspiration was my great uncle Luther, who is actually currently showing art in Baltimore at 78, which I'm really proud of. But this was like one of the first instances of me kind of being able to work with him and learn from him. But I've been drawing from a really young age. I'm currently 21 years old, and I'm in Brooklyn, New York, where I study at the new school. I study fashion design and have a self-determined major in creative entrepreneurship. But I grew up in DC and attended Arlington for like 1 year, and for the rest of my time there, I went to Murray School. And here's another image of my uncle on the left, and here's like an early drawing that I was able to find from when I was 11. When I used to mostly work in charcoal, but I was just very much into art and exploring different mediums and just like being able to portray people, which I've mostly always done. This is the first time I guess I was getting into murals. I was reached out to by the Anacostia Watershed Association, who were kind of putting murals across the DC area to kind of bring attention to the fact that there was pollution happening in the Anacostia River. And so I was in the middle of a gap year in Los Angeles, but I flew back to do this water drain, which is still, I think, on Cedar Street in Southeast DC. But it was my first experience doing a mural, and it was also honoring Frederick Douglass, who his last residence was in DC. But yeah, this was, I feel like, kind of the start of my journey of doing that as an artist. These are like other pieces that I've done, aside from, I guess, doing murals or attending school. I'm really into painting on canvas, and so these are a few pieces that I've either live painted or done commission outside of the other work that I do. And along with that, I guess the first big show that I was able to be a part of was called Anacostia Unmapped, which was kind of highlighting different artists in Anacostia, Southeast DC, which I guess is like a historical district within Washington, DC. And I was born and raised there. So the piece that I created was called Eracism, and it was focused on like the erasure of racial groups within the DC area. And you can't see it in this image, but I had taken a map of the Anacostia Native Americans who lived on the land before it is what it is now. And so there's a map underneath it, and over it I painted an image of some houses, which I feel like won't be there in a few years, but I think that in like painting this, I was kind of able to capture where this neighborhood is now. And every time I come back to DC, it rapidly is changing and nothing ever looks the same. So I was kind of bringing attention to like the displacement of Black and brown bodies within that area, but also that just happens nationwide. And there's a few symbols throughout the piece. But from that piece, I was able to go on the Kojo show for NPR, which was a really amazing experience. And I was able to be in an exhibit with some amazing artists who I was able to learn a lot from. And there's a picture of me and my family and the piece on the wall. Yeah, this was 2018. And I think that's when I kind of saw that like, I can maybe really do this art thing as a career. And this is right before I went back to school. So along with that, I was able to illustrate a children's book called My Dear Queen, which basically focuses on young women, young Black women embracing their hair, their textures. And that's something that's very important to me. So I was honored to be able to collaborate with the author. And it's also available on Amazon if anyone wants or has kids who kind of might be needing a message such as this. And then here's some fashion work that I guess I've done in school. And I would say my approach is more like sculptural and incorporating my fine arts background. And yes, and here's some other shots. And I'm just going to wrap up this kind of intro of my work, but this is, as mentioned before, Stock House. And I was able to find a house in Brooklyn, kind of trying to cultivate this world for artists, or having a space of our own and not really institutionalized, and just growing as a collective and pushing each other, and kind of inspired by past art movements of artists of color. And so this is currently what I'm, I guess, working on, and it's been really fruitful. And yes, and going into the social justice art. Okay, so my journey as a muralist this summer, as most of you know, this summer, or last summer, I'm sorry, we were in a pandemic, but also there's a lot of social justice unrest happening throughout the world, really. And I was kind of stuck inside in quarantine, staring at my phone a lot. And I ended up going back to DC from New York just for spring break, but I ended up getting stuck there because there was a lot of shutdowns in terms of transportation getting back. But yeah, I was kind of inside taking in a lot of information from online and getting very overwhelmed by the just the loads of information that I was taking in, traumatic videos, just everything at once. And I had a friend who was going out and protesting, and at first I was kind of scared to do so, but I ended up one day just going out because I felt like it wasn't right to just be sitting inside when everything was happening. And when I went outside of like my neighborhood or my house in DC, there was just plywood everywhere all over the city that was just blank. And that's the first thing I noticed when I went outside. But also when I did attend protests, it was I was very anxious in that position. It was kind of like going outside. It wasn't clear what people's intentions were. There was a lot of things happening, a lot of loud noises and explosions, and that wasn't, I felt, my form of like being able to protest. But this was a picture that I took to the left. And then to the right was like this organization that was putting up, I guess, murals around DC. And I reached out to them asking them if I could possibly like paint one, because I wanted to continue spreading like the messages and continue spreading petitions for people to sign and actions that people could take. And I had submitted a few murals that were like, that I felt specifically were calling attention to action that people can take in that moment. And I felt a lot of the murals were more like, we're all loved, or like we love everyone, or like Black Lives Matter, but not really spreading specific information. And I was getting a little bit mad because the organization was led by, it was a white-led organization that was started in the midst of this movement, and also kind of filtering out Black voices in a predominantly Black city. And so I kind of took matters into my own hand, and that kind of started my journey of creating murals. And so this was the first day that I went out. I decided to bring like a little ladder and some paints, and I asked a friend to come with me, and we just found a blank wall and just started painting. And this was the first one I did, and that was the night before Breonna Taylor's law was going to be passed. And so I had left a mural that was like calling attention to that and telling people what number to call and more information on like where to go for that. And I came back the next day and that mural was painted over. And so I decided to come again. And this is also around Black Lives Matter Plaza across from the White House. So I came out again the next day, and I decided to paint a photograph of Breonna instead and leave the website where people can like go to And part of this was, for me, I felt like on my Instagram or on my feed, I'm following people who are kind of like similarly in the same mindset of like sharing information as actions to take. And I felt like it was a lot of, like, I don't know who I'm really sending this. I feel like I was sharing it with the people who already had this information. So I feel like putting this art on the street instead made it accessible to many people who weren't aware of what's going on or weren't aware of like how they could help or how they could be involved. But this is one of my favorite photographs that someone took. Her name is Caitlin, but this was while I was painting. And here, I guess, more images of that. But I also felt that in the process of painting this, I felt there was like some sort of therapeutic process, I guess, I was going through while doing this, and kind of humanizing Brianna in a way that I didn't feel like was happening just from repeatedly seeing like hashtags and whatnot on social media. And in that time as well, I was then asked to collaborate on this mural in Georgetown, and I'm not sure if it's still there, but this one was like, I guess I was given permission to do this one, and this was in collaboration with a few other artists in DC, who were specifically Black artists, which was very nice to like be able to connect with other people and create a big work of art. And so this is the piece that I added, which is kind of just like my symbol of like honoring those whose lives have been lost or taken. I guess around the same time I was painting Brianna, I went down a few blocks and I started painting another one, which I came back to a few times. I think I did the Brianna one in like 3 hours. It was just kind of like a dump, but this one I came back to over the course of a few days, and it was for Oluwatoyin Salau, who was a Black activist who was murdered in Florida. And I guess I was friends with her on Instagram, so that one hit a lot closer for me. So this was, I guess, my way of honoring her. And you can see in the mural, there's like this line right here, because every time I would come back, someone flipped the plywood boards. And so there was actually like 4 different versions of this mural, but in her honor. And this was, I guess, the completed thing. And then I had a friend who had driven by it and photographed it. And I'm not sure where it is now, but it being removed from the building. And this was the last mural that I was able to complete in DC. These are all around the White House, but this was simply just an image that I found very powerful from something I had seen on Instagram that I wanted to like recreate on a larger scale. But while doing this one, I was gonna go out alone, but my mom decided to stay with me this day. And this was also a day when there was a high police presence, because as people may have known around this time, when there was like a section in front of the White House of people who were kind of camping out or just living there, and they kind of started to crack down on what they were doing there. And so the police presence was very strong. I think there was like, the entire street behind me was just lined with cop cars. And they came up to my mom and I and reported that, or someone reported to them that we had weapons. So that kind of scared me a little bit, but so that was like the last mural that I worked on, and I don't think I necessarily finished it, but yeah, this was like the progress of what I got to. And I also thought that this one disappeared, but apparently it's sitting in the basement of the Cheesecake Factory, so I'm not sure what's to happen with that. But yeah, that was pretty much the entirety of the murals that I was able to do in my time in DC. And from that, I guess a lot of them were posted or shared, and I was able to like collaborate with this organization in New York when I came back and helped them to like design this larger mural for this game store recently. And that is my presentation. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Yetunde. That's wonderful. I would want to encourage everybody. Dr. Allen is writing it there, but please type your questions in the question and answer, and you can start them now. After Jonah gives a presentation, then we'll have a chance to ask the panelists questions. So please start to write your questions in Q&A. Thank you. Thank you, Yetunde. Next, we have Baylor Baxley, who's going to introduce Jonah Elijah. And Baylor is a sophomore political science major and African American studies minor.
Hi. So Jonah Elijah is a Houston, Texas native now working in LA. He received his bachelor's in studio art from the University of Texas at San Antonio in 2017. He then received his master's of fine arts from Claremont Graduate University in 2020. He discovered art during a painting course titled Painting for Non-Art Majors. Jonah Elijah's work encapsulates Black life in America and addresses controversial issues that actively affect the African American community. Using materials to explore economic inequality, displacement, or human rights, Elijah's art practice embraces discomforting realities. Being raised around lower income hardships, Elijah uses his own personal upbringing as source material and creates work that reflect the Black experience. Whether in his paintings or installations, Jonah layers his work with coded language, offering an abstracted or representational view of what it's like to be Black today.
Thank you, Baylor. Thank you. That was beautiful. And let me start to share my screen. Hello to everyone. Hope you guys are having an amazing day. Let me see. Share screen. All right. And my name is Jonah. Oh, snap. I'm going too fast. So my name is Jonah Elijah. Like Baylor said, I started painting in 2015. I was actually taking a painting class for non-art majors as a business major. And I took that painting class and I fell in love. And this portrait right here is actually my very first self-portrait of myself. And now that I'm looking at it now, I'm like, look at my neck, it's super triangular. And that was just 6 years ago. And from there, I was taking that painting class, ended up switching my major over, and ended up graduating in 2.5 years. I was cramming all my art classes so I could get out of school and graduate with my bachelor's of art and studio art, and I did. I got out of there in 2017, took a year off, and I was trying to find my voice in my artwork. I was seeing all the police brutality on TV, all of the things that was happening in the world, and trying to find my voice in my art and trying to put that in my artwork. And in 2017, this was one of my pieces where I was tackling the issue of social justice. And around that time, that is when Colin Kaepernick was taking his protests. And this was my way of making what they call protest art. And it's called Justice, Liberty, and Freedom for Who. And yeah, and I was basically just showcasing why he was kneeling. It was to shine light, to shed light on what was going on in the world. And I have like bodies back here, like Black people being a target. And that's why he was protesting. And that this was like one of my pieces that I used to apply to grad school in Claremont. And this was one of the many pieces that I submitted. And I would say like social justice, that's just like one layer of like what my work is about. I honestly use my my memory as like source material to make different pieces that celebrate Black life and also bring awareness to Black life. I got a few slides here, so I'm gonna try to get through this thing. I set myself up with a lot of paintings. And this is a piece called "Something is Wrong in America." And I made this piece in the second semester of my master's program at Claremont. And I was using cardboard, and this is on cardboard. And I was thinking about like what cardboard is used for, how homeless people use cardboard to get their messages out. And I was like, I want to kind of use cardboard in a similar way. And in this piece is basically a representation of me being enlightened. And you can see me twisting on the light bulb in my head. At the time I was reading, I was looking up all the things that was going on in the world. I was reading different books, and I felt that feeling of being enlightened. And I knew what was going on in the world, and I just felt like it was something wrong the way Black people were being treated. And you can see that I have the outline of North America right here. And then if you follow this line, I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but this line coming out of my ear, like the wire to the light bulb that's kind of there, it's kind of like these people are pulling it, and I'm also twisting it. But if they're pulling it, they're bringing down the light bulb that's about to cut on, and the plug is right here in the corner. And that's that moment of being enlightened and learning and knowing what's going on. So that's me realizing that there's really something wrong in America. And let's go to the next one. And I know this one might look like a piece it's like, this is just a big foot. This is not about social justice or anything. But this piece is a way that I'm using my memory. I'm reflecting on the way I was raised in the house I grew up living with my father during the week. And I was thinking about how I used to go downstairs, and I would go down there and get a snack late at night or just at nighttime. And anytime I would go down, I would get my snack and I would immediately cut off the lights and rush back upstairs because I was always afraid of some imaginary thing in the background, but it was really nothing there. And I kind of related that feeling to how we as Black people go out into the world, and we're always afraid of something or some police officer behind us trying to take our life away. And I think that same paranoia, that feeling of me running up the stairs thinking somebody is behind me, that is the same feeling we go out into the world. And around this time in 2019, I'm starting to use found objects, and you can see I have like some, see if I can zoom in. Uh-oh. Okay, I can't zoom in. But I do have some shoes in here that I'm starting to use found objects and put them onto my work. So I have soles from shoes on here, and I feel like with the soles, I was designing my own sole, and you can see my big footprint on the piece. And this is made with cardboard, wood, and what else? And the shoe soles. And now, well, while I was at CGU, I discovered I was painting dominoes. And the piece to the right, it's called Do Black Men Know? But it's really called Domino Effect. I just added the black in between do and men in the middle of domino. So it's right then, I feel like I was protesting to like my neighborhood. This is before I made this piece to the right, before I went to grad school. So it was during the time in which I was applying for grad school. And I had recently lost a friend due to gun violence in my neighborhood. And I felt like I was in the middle of this, like trying to protest about social justice with police killing us, and trying to like protest to my friends that's killing each other in my neighborhood. And I was kind of relating that to like dominoes, because we kind of all look alike. And I was thinking like, this is a domino effect. So it's called Do Black Men Know Effect. Do we know what's affecting our community? And the piece to the left is called If We Can Build Together, We Can Become One. So that's me using those dominoes and building up those dominoes to show that we you know, lean on each other and build with each other to become one unity, one unified group, rather. And that's just a close-up of Do Black Men Know, Domino Effect. And this is a piece that is called We've Been Equal. I forgot to put the VE. We've been equal, 5 for 5 compromise. So right now I'm exploring history. I'm thinking about the 3/5 compromise, which basically that was in the I don't know why I'm blanking, in the Constitution, was basically equal black people as 3/5 of a man. And you know, I felt like they still treat us this way, 3/5 of a man. And I wanted to make something using dominoes that has the numbers. And I took that 3 at the top of this piece. I used the red, black, and green dots to make that a 5 and make that 5 for 5, saying that we always been equal. And I used a bit of canvas in the back to shred, to make a part of the American flag. And at this time, I'm still using found objects and making some sculpture-like paintings that extend and have real material. And this one is called F12. I know my grandmother and some of my family in here, so I don't want to say what that is, but F12. But 12 is like that's what we call police. That's like the Ebonic way of saying F the police. And in this piece, I just have the domino. I'm using the domino in an anthropomorphic way. And I basically used the big 6, and I had them gathered up in the corner, kind of like planning and plotting on Black people, and kind of just showing this a bunch of abstract dominoes. So the brown dominoes are kind of like Black people, light skinned people. So sometimes I would change the color of dominoes just to be creative with these simple games and simple just ways. I feel like the domino is a symbol of our culture. Like we sit in front of anytime we gather together, we play dominoes and have fun. This is my way of flipping it. And in this piece is called Moment of Silence. So this piece is kind of like a performance. I actually have a video. I wish I would have put it in here. I painted the front of I had like a little jumpsuit on. It was a white jumpsuit. And I painted the front of it, and I just laid down on a wooden panel. And then I kind of let myself up. And then I was using my body as like a stamping mechanism. And it kind of made this handprint of like, hands up, don't shoot. Or it can be read so many different ways. Some people have told me this kind of reminds them of like a skull of a ram, like something you would see in the desert, which kind of represents death as well. And I was just kind of thinking about how this is something we do before we are taken away by the police, or before we are shot or anything, or us being on the floor, the tracing. Let me go to the next slide. So in this piece, this is an installation, and this is called Home is Where the Hatred Is. And I actually have a link. At least I thought I had a link. Well, where'd that link? Well, this is an installation called Home is Where the Hatred Is. And I took a bunch of found objects, and I kind of made the centerpiece of this. I made a house-like makeshift hat rack and a shoe rack. And I was kind of using these hood symbols of, like, you know, when you see like the shoes hanging from the power line, that it can either mean somebody either died right there, somebody's partner died right there, or somebody could be selling drugs right there. But I'm thinking about, in this instance, how I have like an ironing board. I'm thinking like, this is like before we go out into the world to have to deal with what really takes place in the world, dealing with racism or dealing with police officers, and how we wear these like powerful clothes and powerful hats that say like Black Lives Matter. Or in these hats, this one says King of Kings, And it's a shirt. It's a shirt on the rack. I mean, on the ironing board that says, "This world is ours." And it's a bunch of Black people holding up Black fists. And you can see I have the domino pieces on the wall in this installation. So that's F12 with the red and blue lights. And I really wish I would have put that video in here so you guys can hear it. But I had the "Home is Where the Hatred Is" song played. I had looped the Jill Scott Heron song, and it was just playing the whole time. "Home is Where the Hatred Is." And this is another piece. And I had the shirt that said "Liberty," basically saying liberty is a lie. It kind of reflects back to that very first piece of Colin Kaepernick. And I had some rope and I kind of tied it up and I made it look really dramatic. And it just kind of looked really good. And I think this is like the end of 2019. And right before 2019, I'm going into my last semester, 2020. And this is where I'm starting to think about my thesis show. And COVID hit. So school was closed and my thesis show was postponed. And I was able to go back home, and I went back home like Mother's Day, the day after Mother's Day, and my birthday is May 20th, and then 5 days later, George Floyd passed away. And I realized, well, not I realized, but I realized how close to home that was, me being that I knew some of George Floyd's family members, and it was just a crazy time for me because I was on a high of my birthday just passing. I was really happy, enjoying family and friends. And then 5 days later, he passed away. And I kept seeing people post it, people like really close to me post it and saying that they knew this guy. And I was just avoiding the video, avoiding it. And found out that I actually knew his people. And then like a week later, right before his funeral, I was given a chance to do like my first like public art mural. And here is the piece. This is in 3rd Ward, Houston, Texas. And I was able to do this section right here. I was able to put up the 3rd Ward hand with the dominoes. And the rest of the artists were street artists and they wanted to remain anonymous. And I was like, cool. If y'all want me to take credit for the whole mural, I will, but I always give the street artists their credit, just not their names, because that's how street art is. But I was able to put up the hood, so that made me happy, and I was able to put my medicine in the candy with it. So using the dominoes, the 3 is a 3, but it's also a W, and the dominoes spell ARD, which means 3rd Ward. And I was thinking about the dominoes. I painted them in red, black, and green, was saying like us in this Black community, we could lean on each other and use each other to support one another. And usually when dominoes come together, that's when in the game of dominoes, that's when money adds up, so we can build our economic system. And this is another shot of the George Floyd mural with people out there. And then right after that mural, I was given the opportunity, I was commissioned to do a mural at Station Museum of Contemporary Art. And this piece is called Black in America. And this is a portrait of me kneeling on the flag. And you can see that that Big 6 kind of making this domino effect of these brown dominoes that kind of symbolize George Floyd. He was 46. Breonna Taylor, she was 26. And Philando Castile, he was 32. Sandra Bland, she was 28. And I'm just for some reason, the museum, they didn't want me to paint Colin Kaepernick. And that was cool. And I was like, I'll put myself. And I just was kind of like showing why he was kneeling again. So everything it came back full circle from the very first piece I showed you guys that I did in 2017 of Colin Kaepernick. And the red bird here is a symbol. It means that a loved one is visiting you. And this is another piece I did at Station Museum called I Know My Life Matters, Do You? And this was the first piece I did for Station Museum. They commissioned me to do. And I made a TV, and I kind of had like some little kids standing behind a cardboard that said, "I know my lives matter, do you?" But I just kind of spelled it out in dominoes, and I put reality TV really small because I feel like this is this is our reality. And during the uprising, I was thinking, I think in it says the revolution will be televised. This is another shot of both of those pieces installed. Oh, and this, I'm giving a little back story behind a piece. So the NAACP, they made this flag, and this flag is called it says "A man was lynched yesterday," and they made this around the early 1920s. Early 1900s, 1920 through 1928, and they made this flag because it was a way of letting people know that a black man was lynched. And I think it was a kid, a 17-year-old, and it's in this article below, a 17-year-old named Jesse Washington in Waco, Texas. He was actually lynched and beaten in Waco, Texas, and they had over like 10,000 white people come out to see him be lynched. And then the flag was a way, I think the NAACP, they were flying the flag around the headquarters, and eventually the landlord for the headquarters, they told them to stop flying it around or it would be some trouble. And this flag it's a pretty popular flag, but an artist named Dred Scott, he remade the flag in 2015, and he made a flag that says, "A man was lynched by the police yesterday." And I felt like I should respond. I wanted to make a response to this, and always give like the history before I show this piece because I don't want people looking at me crazy. And this is the next piece. And this is my response to that piece. And I use this for my thesis show back in October in 2020. This is called "A Black Man Was Lynched by the Police Yesterday." And that same rope that I had in that installation where I had the rope tied around the seat, I kind of used that rope as a way of hanging the piece. Because I couldn't figure out how I wanted to hang the piece, and I knew what the subject matter was in this piece. And it just got the message right across really quickly. Let's see. Uh-oh. And it's like in this little, I wish I could zoom in, but I can't for some reason. Uh-oh. Oh man, I gave y'all a sneak preview. Let me keep going. But yes, yeah. So then in this piece, this is in 2020 as well, around September, and this one is called "Black Lives." And I'm using those carpets that we used to have as kids, those little rugs that don't really show our reality or our neighborhoods. And this was my way of using the things that was happening over the summer when the police stations were being set on fire. And I was kind of remaking that, making that scene. And this piece is called, I'm doing the same thing here. And it says, "Cut on the news, mama, they didn't have to kill him." And I'm reflecting on George Floyd. And yeah, and this is that same piece of carpet. I just used it to make it look like a TV screen and how it looked on CNN when they were showing the police station being set on fire. And this is a piece called "All Skin Folk Is Not Kinfolk." And I was making a portrait of Attorney General Daniel Cameron. And I wanted to make him, I was watching a TV series called, I don't know why I'm blanking on it. Love Country Craft. And they had an episode where a Black woman, she turned white. And I was like, that's who Daniel Cameron really reminds me of. So I wanted to paint him white. And he didn't really just look white to me. I had him looking like this for a very long time. And it really wasn't coming off as a white person. It wasn't doing it. So one day I kind of just, poked at it, and it made this little hole, and I just kind of cut his face out, and I kept the face, and then I put it on the wall and I balled up the face, and I was like, this is perfect. This is a prime example of who this guy is, Daniel Cameron. He was the guy that basically didn't convict the officers in Breonna Taylor's case. So all skin folk isn't kinfolk. He's the prime example. a square. And oh, I didn't even give any backdrop. So that first mural I did for George Floyd, when I went home, I met a guy out there named Carl Davis, and he said we kind of kept contact, and I was able to do, they asked me to design a Black Lives Matter mural for I went to the same high school as George Floyd, and they asked me, they was like, Jonah, you would be perfect to design this mural. And I designed it like in August of last year, of 2020. And I recently brought this design to life, along with the help of alumni, Public Works, and some of my friends and family, and we were able to, knock out this project in 3 days. I saw what was happening all over the world, and they wanted me to do the same thing with Black Lives Matter in the middle of the street. I just kind of wanted to leave Black lives really bold. I wanted to leave them in the colors of crimson and gold, the school colors. And I wanted to put all the designs in matter. And they also wanted to pay a tribute to George Floyd, being that he was a football player and he was a good player on the state team, I believe. So I did this jersey too, number 88. I had some of George Floyd's family come out there and help me paint as well. I think this little girl right here, that's actually his niece. Now that I think about it. And this is another shot of it. And this is a new piece called All Damn, Trying to Avoid a DWB. And this is a piece thinking about, this is a piece reflecting the moment when I see a police car behind me, and I'm thinking about, oh man, I hope they don't pull me over. And I'm thinking about all of these different things that flash in my head. I don't want to be another statistic or another person that, that gets killed by the police. And I'm giving all these perspectives. So that in this top left corner, this is a view of like police cars from up top. And this is also like, the whole painting is a view from up top, kinda. But I also give different perspective of someone inside a car, and he's kind of looking out how we all do. We look out that window when they behind us, like, ooh, I hope they don't cut on their car. And we all kind of say, oh, damn, or oh, whatever. And yeah, I'm just playing with the perspective here, and I'm kind of making it dramatic in this little corner. So say if someone did get killed by the police, we usually go out to where they were killed, or, put up flowers and put up candles and stuff. So that is a different perspective as well. And I believe that's it. Try not to go too long. Let me stop sharing my screen.
All right. Thank you, Jonah, and thank you to Yetunde. First of all, good evening, everyone. I am Dr. William Allen, and I am in the Department of Philosophy and Religious Studies. I am also organizer of this Sophia M. Libman Humanities Colloquium. We're going to move into our Q&A session. Before we do that, Jonah, Yetunde, I don't know if you had a chance to sort of look at the chat, but you're getting a lot of praise. They're thanking you. So here I'll sort of read one email sort of thanking you first in terms of your artistry. So thank you for that. And also your bravery in terms of doing your public art. So in the chat, you're getting a lot of praise, and I think it's well deserved. Okay. So here we're gonna move into our Q&A. And before we jump into actual questions that the attendees are presenting, we have some preliminary questions. And this is for both of you. And you can start off, whoever wants to start first. So we got a couple of preliminary questions, and then we'll jump into the actual questions in the Q&A. I'll try to get as many as I can, but may not get to all of them. But you'll certainly still, for people who are attending, go ahead and submit questions, and we'll see how far we go. All right, so for our preliminary questions, this is for both of you. So in your opinion, what is the role or responsibility of the artist in terms of racial and political justice? So what sort of role do you think the artist plays in terms of pursuing these things?
I'm not sure who should go first. You can go first if I feel like you were ready to answer. Okay. I think in this time, it was a really weird time for me, kind of just seeing these cycles happen again. And also, I feel like since people had time to like dissect and dive into the ways that racial justice kind of permeates a lot more than just like police brutality, but like the structural racism that exists. And it was kind of like a lot of the experiences that I had as a Black woman were being like, not watered down, but they were being like explained to people on Instagram infographics. And it was really a weird experience for me to see that. So it's just like the things that I've already experienced are all of a sudden like important or at the forefront. So I feel like going off of that, like our lived experiences, like just being able to put that into context in art in itself, I feel like is an important thing to do. And I feel like the role of an artist, there's like two quotes that I always think about. There's one by Nina Simone that's like to reflect the times. And then there's one by Toni, I forget her last name. I think it's Lombard, but it's like the role of the artist is to make the revolution irresistible. And so I feel like both of those things, I feel like come into play. And I feel that art kind of outlives all of us. Like if you create a piece of work, like it'll live past you and it'll represent how you were feeling at that time, or like what was happening. And it's kind of a historical artifact. And so as an artist, knowing that like I'm creating art, but also anything that I create and put out there is like kind of time stamping where I am now or what's going on or what's happening, and knowing that like art has the power to build a narrative, and you have the ability to kind of form your narrative with your art and not allowing other people to take control of that, and kind of being your own authority in terms of what's important and what you want to bring attention to.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Yetunde on a lot of those points. I think the role, you know, I feel like we should always talk about it or have something to bring to the table when it comes to our artwork, especially with that subject matter, because we live in it, and we could easily go outside and, you know, be in the midst of it. So I feel like it's important for us to talk about it, and, you know, like Yetunde said, it's kind of like leaving those historical artifacts. I'm sure in the next 10 or 20 years, the kids growing up, they're gonna see it, and they're gonna hopefully they don't have to experience. Well, hopefully they might experience the same things that we are experiencing. And I think it'll put things in a better perspective. I mean, not in a better perspective, but they will have something that they can relate to.
Okay. Second question, and this actually appeared in the Q&A as well too. So where do you find your energy and inspiration and drive in order to do your work?
I find my inspiration, my energy and drive, I find that in many places. Just sometimes just driving down the street, just seeing people on the street, just seeing things. I get it from my family. I get it from my memory. Sometimes just reading a book. Sometimes finding something to read that's informative. That kind of gives me the energy and drive to want to make something that's powerful, that I think would be powerful. And that's pretty much where I get my energy and drive from.
Yeah, for me, I have like mild ADHD, so I feel like my attention is always like in many different places, and so I feel like I'm always taking in things. But for me, reading actually comes as a big source of like sparking creative inspiration, even though I don't get to do it that often. But I feel like having someone speak about something or kind of like narrate something, but not giving you a visual, it forces you to visualize for yourself what what is being said or what is, especially a lot of like literature with symbolism. And my mom's a literature teacher, so like I feel like we just have a lot of books in our house. But specifically for me, I feel like Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison was like, for a minute, a big like source of inspiration for me wanting to do certain pieces. And I feel like also having a sketchbook, like I think lately I've felt burnt out creatively, but there will be times where I like come up with ideas and they're like running through my head and I don't have the time to do them, but I will record what I'm thinking in a sketchbook or like record that idea down somewhere. And like I have tons of sketchbooks ever since I was like, I've kept every sketchbook I've ever had since I was 6 years old. So I just have like stacks of books that are just full of ideas. And so it's always, I feel like, helpful to go back when you do have the time or you do have the resources, which I feel like I'm in a space now where I do have more resources to do certain projects, and things that seemed like really big ideas in the past aren't so like unattainable now. So I think just keeping a record of when you do have bursts of inspiration, and then when you don't have those, like going back to the ones you did have and like finding ways to bring that to life and finding a way to like, yeah. And I guess aside from that, history inspires me, just like looking at how far we've come or like looking at other people, because nothing we do is like original. I mean, you can, there's a bit of originality, but a lot of ideas are like recycled, but I feel like it's more just about bringing your own voice. Or like when Jonah was showing the piece with the flag, and it's like iterations of things that have already been done, but you're like adding it's like having a conversation with like the past and the present and the future. And it's like everything you're creating now is also history, but like it's also the future. So it's like you're working with time and like parallels of time, and recognizing that you have a role in that timeline of art and art history and just history in general. So yeah.
Okay. And your last comments there sort of lead into the last preliminary question. So can you talk about how you represent Black life and represent your community in your paintings and installations? So again, this is a question for both of you.
Should I just go off of what I was?
Yeah, yes, I think your last comment was a good segue into that question, actually.
Yeah, I feel like for me, like, I feel like it's not really like how do I represent, it's just like representing in general. Like I feel like just the action. I saw a quote today that was like, if an artist loves you, like you'll never die, which I guess goes along with like the whole idea of art being an artifact or like historical pieces, whatever. But yeah, like I feel like if there's something that you care about or something that is like hits close to home or whatever, and you just find a way to represent it within your art or like weave that story into the narrative of your art, then it's just becomes something more. It becomes something that people can refer back to or just learn more about, like whoever's viewing the art. And I think with street art, it's like you're shifting like accessibility, so it's not like in a museum or a gallery where people might not be able to access that. And so I feel like being able to put that into the world or just like leave it on the street, it's like you don't know who's going to view it or like how it might impact whoever, but like someone's going to see it, and it's honoring whatever subject matter you decided to include, and bringing attention to that. And it's like you're the authority of what is seen or like what is given attention. And yeah.
Could you ask that question one more time, William? I'm sorry. You muted.
You're muted. You're muted. You're muted.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. So the question is, can you talk about how you represent Black life and represent your community in your paintings and installations?
Man, I do that by really studying my community, studying my family, my friends, because I feel like they are like my subject matter. They are like my resources for like my pieces. And that's just, I feel like doing intensive study on them and doing intensive study on my community, what's going on in my community. That's how I can represent Black life in my pieces. Just like that installation I showed with the shoes hanging, just thinking about what those symbols mean, finding all the symbols, all the Black symbols, the ultra Black symbols, and really beautifying it and making them icons. I think that's my way of representing Black life.
Okay. So now we can move to the Q&A. And as we were sort of talking, several more questions. So we got quite a few questions here. Maybe I'll be able to get to all of them. So I had to be a bit selective. But here I'm going to start a question early on. And so here we have someone asking, when you began your journey as an artist, did you think you would make such an impact as the ones you are speaking about today?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm gonna honestly say no, I didn't. I did not think so. But yeah, no, I just gotta leave it right there. No, I didn't think so. I honestly didn't. I didn't know. I really didn't know where I was going because I was still like finding myself and finding my voice in my work, and just really tapping into the things that I was interested in. That's kind of how the impact came, and using those things that those things that I was interested in and putting it into work. That's kind of how the impact came.
Okay.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Yeah, they was asking like, so we started out as an artist. So here, I believe you said you've been doing art all your life, back when you were 6 years old. So starting out in art, did you think that your art would have the impact that it has today? So you have sort of, yeah.
I feel like I'm still in I know I've been doing art for a while, but I feel like I'm in the early stages of an artistic career, whatever that means for me, because I'm also studying fashion design in school, and I'm not sure what I'm doing with that, but also like have kind of taken a different path, I guess, with this art house studio thing that I'm building. So I think I'm still along the journey, but I definitely didn't think that people would care as much about the art that I was making as I see like now, or the support that is given. And I actually feel like, yeah, there's a lot more, there's more to come, or a lot more exploration to be done. So I'm still kind of navigating that a little bit.
Okay. Next question pertains particularly to, let's say, some of the public art you've both done. So how do you find the perseverance to keep going back and painting murals when you come back the next day and found they've been painted over or altered? And here they end with, well, I realize it's public art, but I would imagine it'll be hard to see all your work and passion sort of altered or painted over.
I feel like it motivated me to go out and paint more. I don't know what, maybe there's something wrong with me, but it's just, yeah, like, I don't know if the people who painted over it were like for the message or because they just wanted to keep the walls just white, but like, to me, that was like, that motivated me to want to continue to paint more like messages or like spread it more. Because I was already angry in the first place. Like that was what made me go out and paint. So, and I just wanted to get out of the house, like took all the supplies that I could find in my mom's basement and just like did it. And so, yeah, I'm not sure if that's like a solid answer, but it's like the more I saw people trying to cover it up, the more I was like, okay, like, well, go out and do it again, like, or try again, or do something different, put it somewhere else. And also, most of the, I don't know if I said it, but the painting I did of Brianna was like, it was kind of at the peak of a lot of the protests, and instead of painting that one over, because the first one got painted over, but that one got cut out of the wall. It was like under a walkway, like where they put like the scaffolding with it, like when people are doing construction. And it was like a wall had kind of formulated in front of the White House. So it was just a collection of people's signs and stuff. So I was like, okay, if I paint it here, maybe it'll be like accepted amongst this other protest art stuff that's being put up. And then I went back to New York and this organization was like, they cut it out the wall and like, it's not there anymore. But they said they wanted to preserve it to put it somewhere else. And so, I don't know, there were a lot of, I wasn't sure, similarly to the street artists that like Jonah was talking about, I wasn't sure if I should stay anonymous or not, but I feel like as I was painting, people were like, oh, like leave your stuff. And I didn't really want to do that, but that's the only way that I actually figured out where the pieces ended up afterwards. So I'm still trying to figure out like where they should go, because right now they're just like, I guess, sitting in these corporations' basements. But I feel like the act of painting itself was my form of like release. So I didn't necessarily, I guess I wasn't necessarily attached. It was just like as they were released, whoever would receive the information would receive it. But that was like my form of getting out my own frustrations.
Joe, you have any comments on that?
No, I think Yetunde hit that one right on the head.
So when people cover stuff up, it's something that affects you? Because I would imagine if I created a beautiful piece of art and someone went and painted it over, I'd be kind of pissed, to be quite honest.
Oh yeah, I would be mad about it, but it would just make me come back and do it bigger and more broader. So we're just gonna be going back and forth at a point in time. Okay. I think that's just gonna bring more awareness to my work.
Okay. And here's I guess like we could say it's an associated question. So do you believe your art is more creative when it's protest inspired or life experience inspired? And what the question here, the sort of parentheses, they sort of asking in terms of life experience inspired, whereas art that's outside of the struggle, brutality, and disenfranchisement. So here they're asking, well, which one inspires you more, or if it's the case they're the same, whether it's sort of life inspired or protest inspired.
I think it's the same for me. I really get that same. I get that same amount of energy when those ideas spark in my head. Depending, it doesn't really even matter about the subject matter on that one. I still feel the same way. I still feel like super inspired. Yeah. I mean, I feel like I'm equally creative. I could do some things in each field.
I was gonna say I am still kind of navigating like my personal practice, or what I want to say in my personal artwork, but I feel like when you're doing like protest art or street art, it's a whole different context, and like the act of doing it itself, for street art at least, the act of doing it itself is protest, or like so I feel like that action becomes a part of the artwork. And for me, I don't think I was necessarily thinking about like the composition or like the color scheme or whatever. Like I was using like tempera paint and like spray cans and crayons and like whatever I could find. So yeah, I guess the creative approach for that is different from the other one. I was also trying to do it as quickly as possible, or like just trying to get it done before it got to nighttime or before there was like the lockdown in DC. So like that is much different from like if you're sitting at home and like you're like, okay, what colors do I want to pick, or like where do I want to set this up, or yeah, whatever that might be. And I think they're different. I think you're aware that other people are going to see one, and like the other one, like people might not see it, or it's just for yourself. So yeah.
Okay. And it actually addresses another question. So someone asked, well, what things do you consider before beginning pieces that address social justice? And do those considerations change between art that's public, versus private? So I think you sort of discussed that a little bit, or something you're going to add into answering that question. But I think you actually discussed that a little bit there, Yatunde.
Could you ask that again?
Oh, yeah. So here they're asking, what things do you consider before beginning pieces that address issues of social justice? And do those considerations change between art that's public or private?
Oh no, it definitely doesn't change for me at all. I think it should be as blatant and as raw as it would be in the studio compared to outside in the world. Just just for example, how I used the F12 piece that was a painting that was in the studio, and I brought it to life in the on the public work. I think it should be as blatant.
Okay. And let's see here. So here, this is a question for both of you. Oh, well, let me see here. There's one question that's specifically for Yetunde and one that's for both, for the same person. So here it says, I'll start with the specific question. So with reference to Yetunde's mention that the public Black Lives Matter mural program in DC was organized by a white-run organization, how did that impact your freedom of expression?
At least when I was like coordinating with them, like, because I guess they put like a public call or whatever. And on top of that, they were also paying artists to paint like murals on businesses. So I'm not sure if they had restrictions, but a lot of the mural pieces that I proposed were like call to actions or like calling out certain behaviors, and I don't think they liked that, or like they weren't wanting to represent specific people, or like I feel like that's why most of theirs were like, oh, like all like one love or like peace, like that kind of narrative, which is like, of course, but like more has to be done beyond that, and like that's not. So I felt like if I was to actually want to approach protesting using art, like that didn't make sense to me, and it didn't make sense to be like filtered through like a white organization who was also giving most of the stipends to white artists to paint Black Lives Matter art. So the whole situation just didn't make sense to me. And so I just decided to do what I was going to do, but without asking for permission from anyone, because I was like, these are the same, like there's so many blank canvases throughout this city right now. So why am I asking them for this permission? And so I don't think it really changed my did they say process? I forget. I don't think it changed what I would have done creatively. I ended up not asking them because I wasn't trying to like ask for permission on what to paint. I just wanted to paint something. So, or use the city as a billboard or a place to put messages.
Okay. And we take it as a couple more questions, but this is from the same attendee here. So this is for both artists, and it's sort of associated with the last question. So the person asked, well, what can white allies do to provide room for the expression of such profound and topical messages, or such profound and topical art? And Yetunde, what I find interesting is in terms of that you had just you had to sort of do you to a certain extent in terms of, okay, well, there was a certain conception of how, say, maybe the sponsors wanted the art to be painted and displayed, but you seem to say, well, that wasn't really representative of you as an artist or in terms of the message. So maybe in terms of what can say white supporters do in order to sort of help you in terms of express yourself, and so your sort of conception as an artist, and in terms of the message you want to get out in terms of racial justice.
Oh, I feel like Jonah was about to talk, so I was like, I'll go after it because I feel like I've been talking for a while. But yeah.
Oh no, I was trying to figure out how I wanted to answer that, but the question is, how can white allies like basically help us get our message out?
Yeah, and support your message. Yeah. That's essentially what they're asking.
That's a great question. I think I really don't know how they can help. I think they could, yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to speak too soon. I don't really know how to answer that one.
Okay. So Yetunde, I'm curious here, what, in terms of your experience, so going back to what you finished talking about, how could have individuals, say organizations that were sponsoring artists, what sort of things they could have done better in order to allow artists to express their own voice in terms of their art?
I guess not centering themselves in the I don't like, my mind just popped to this other situation that I saw, which is, I feel like was happening a lot. A lot of corporations were kind of like hopping on the, I don't want to say bandwagon, because maybe some of them had like good intentions, but it just kind of became like a trend type of thing. And I remember seeing one specific organization, or not organization, it was a brand, it was like a clothing brand. They were doing like these shirts for Black Lives Matter, and it was kind of like the artist of, it was a white-owned brand. He had designed be like Black Lives Matter shirts, and was kind of like, I don't know, I feel like he was really centering himself in this kind of movement in a way that wasn't like, didn't feel genuine to me, or wasn't like really about spreading the message. It was more like, I raised $1 million, like we just raised $1 million, we raised this much money. And he was like, we're donating it to Black Lives Matter. And people were starting to be like, okay, like what does that mean? Like, who exactly are you donating to? Because you also live in a neighborhood that is being gentrified, so there's the opportunity for you to give that money to like local organizations instead of like this kind of general like Black Lives Matter, which I feel like was happening a lot. And I feel like there was a lot of like, I don't know, it felt like one-time thing, and I feel like the work that has to be done needs to be over time, and it has to be like a lot of mutual aid efforts, or a lot of getting involved in community things, or things in your own, like there's people around you who are struggling, who need help. And it just felt very like, I guess, performative, or just like posting to be like, oh, I did this and whatever. So I felt like, as in that example, I was like, he could have kind of like given up his platform to another Black creative to like share their story, or like share their art using his shirts or something like that, rather than centering himself as a white male in this like conversation, or showing how much he was doing, which was kind of like white saviorism to me a little bit. So I guess just like, yeah, giving a platform for those who are experiencing these things to speak on it, or to kind of like share their story, their narrative, whatever. I don't know if that makes sense, but I guess that also ties into like the people doing the murals, like giving space to Black artists in DC to speak about Black Lives Matter, or giving them the opportunity to share their art in that way. And like,
great, no, excellent one. And this is the last question. So what advice would you give students trying to pursue protest art, specifically for Black Lives Matter?
I would tell them to just be as honest as possible. I would tell them to do exactly what they love to do. You said artists that's trying to pursue protest art. Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I would tell them just to study all the Black leaders from the past up until now, and then I think that is a great way to form a voice. And you know, I think that's a good way to start.
Yetunde, you have any advice for burgeoning protest artists?
I feel like I agree with that. Just being honest in the art, and telling your story, or telling your narrative. And I don't know, street art to me was like the most freeing way to share that. But I think just starting conversations and being open, as Jonah said.
Okay, great. So here we're going to conclude our Q&A. And again, I want to thank you both for taking time for again, showing us your art. Certainly answering questions. So we have quite a few attendees, and We got through quite a few questions, not everyone, so I apologize. We didn't get to everybody's questions, but I think we had a good session here. And Dr. Tucker-Worgs had some closing remarks.
Okay. I just want to say just thank you. I just have all thank yous to say. I'm so appreciative. Well, I'll start with the people who helped put this program together. So we had, all the people on the program tonight, and then also other students from the BSU, like Alea Hannibal, you knew I was going to say your name, who did the poster and did several copies of it and sent it out and did that sort of thing. And also our administrative assistant, Hillary Stipelman, who also did so much to help put this program together. So I just want to thank everyone who did that. This was so remarkable. It's just, I just feel so fortunate to have ended our race, politics, and public policy series with these two remarkable, talented, brilliant truth tellers. I mean, I have hope. I'm not a pessimistic person, but I find myself just having so much hope. I actually kind of stalked both of you all through your relatives, and I've been watching your work and watching you as you have just been developing, and it's just so inspirational, and it just gives me a lot of hope for the future. And I just want to just encourage you to keep on telling your truths and keep on leading us and keep on envisioning and creating. This is what we need in this world, in my opinion. People who can think about the future, but put us in the past. I mean, put us in the context. But also and understand where we've been and all that, but also think about and imagine our future and how we can make it better and do our part. And so you just do that so wonderfully, and I'm so proud of you and so happy about this evening, and I appreciate you showing us your work. And so with that, I mean, I don't have, I'm just, I just thank you, and and I also want to thank all the people who came, the participants. I appreciate you, all of your questions. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of them, but I think, we did a good job and you did a good job of explaining and talking about your work. And so I just appreciate all of you all for hanging in there and being engaged in what they were presenting us today. So with that, I would just say good night and just have a good rest of the week.
Thank you so much. Thank you for this.
And shout out to all my people who came. Shout out to H-Town and to Washington, D.C. Just everybody, take good care.
Thank you, everybody.
Good evening, everyone.
And Hood College.
Thank you.